I am here to introduce a woman who needs no introduction, but loves introductions. She is a gifted writer, actor, comedian, and author of the New York Times bestseller, Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns, and the upcoming book, Why Not Me? I've never met her before. I'm very excited to speak with her today. Please welcome Mindy Kaling.
Wow, guys, thank you so much for coming out here. So, this is what it feels like to be the head of Scientology. This is like a David Miscavige type crowd, huh?
Yeah, and you have some things to tell them about how to take control of their future, right?
Everyone was born with a number of
Okay, let's not get into trouble here.
We don't need to discuss that now. Guys, thank you so much for coming. This is like a really great crowd.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ohio loves you. There's a lot of signs here. A lot to read. Now, on the way over, I introduced you because you have so many credits. You're a hyphenate, but you said to me what your real ambition is for being able to have a bio sort of on the way over here that I thought was very funny.
Oh, well, I've always been really impressed and jealous of people like Hillary Clinton, who obviously has, was a senator, then the Secretary of State, and is so accomplished, was a Rhodes Scholar, and all these things. But then she's the kind of person that on the bio over Twitter, it just says Mom. Because she's just so accomplished, and that's the thing that's most important to her. And so I was thinking lately, oh man, that's a
right.
It's kind of like a...
When you can go with one word.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I thought that was very impressive.
So I have a few questions for you.
Thanks.
Number one, how dare you? That's for the fans. Now, your new book, which we're here to talk about, Why Not Me? The title, which I love, can be interpreted a number of different ways. What does Why Not Me mean?
I chose Why Not Me because it has kind of two big meanings. The first one is the kind of wistful meaning, which is I'm in an age now where a lot of my friends are getting married or having kids, and I have a sense of a little bit of feeling left out of hey, why not me? Why am I not selected to go on that route in life yet, hopefully? And then another side of it is the ambitious side of me that for my entire life, though no one has ever bared any passing resemblance to me in television or film, of being why not me? Why can't I have that life and that career and that, So that's the other reason why I titled it that.
Now, as someone who's done a lot of work in voiceover animation, you're in the new Pixar movie Inside Out.
It's amazing, by the way. I just got back from the Cannes Film Festival.
Okay, I have questions here.
The thing about Europe...
This was more of a tangent than a new platform.
I've changed since Cannes.
Yeah.
When you hold a euro in your hand, it makes you wonder, what...
Interesting that was your biggest takeaway. It's the money.
The money.
It was about the money. The little things. But as a voiceover actress, could you give us a few different readings of Why Not Me that would show all the range of meanings that the title can embody?
Sure, there's, why not me? Lamely in the corner, wishing and hoping for something.
Yep.
And then the other is more of the bossy version of hand in my hips, hey, why not me? Or why the fuck not me? Is more what that was.
Which the publisher rejected.
Yeah.
Now, you have a very popular Twitter account, and I enjoy it immensely. If this book had hashtags, why not me, to give us a sort of preview, and I will walk you through some of the chapter titles, and we'll get a sense of what you talk about in the book. But if you could hashtag this book, what would some of those hashtags be?
Hashtag blessed. Hashtag white people problems. Hashtag black people problems. Hashtag that glammy book star life. Is that
hashtag can.
Hashtag can. I was at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah. What about sort of topics that would be in the book?
Oh,
that
hashtag
you address?
hashtag family, hashtag heartache, hashtag growing up, hashtag second coming of age. I'm just going to try to maximize my coming of age stories.
Well, you do talk a lot in your first book about childhood and what led you from sort of that great back cover photo of you to sort of the great front cover photo of you and how that had transpired in your life. What would you say
It's very
this book-
polite. You're obviously in the back cover of my first book is a portrait of
Adorable.
a portrait of a child whose gender you can't tell. I
A
look like-
beautiful, adorable, gender-neutral child.
Child, yeah.
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 And now a very obviously fashionable.
And obviously feminine. I don't know.
Sure.
Okay, sorry. Wait, what was your question?
My question is, what in the first book, if the first book was largely about your journey from where you had begun as a child, of course, to this person who was on sort of a character on The Office, so much has happened to you in the years since then. Does this book sort of revisit your whole life with a new perspective, or does it focus more on what has happened to you since? What's new in this book?
I think that I had a lot of fun in the first book, kind of telling people who I was, because I wrote that when I was at The Office, and it was largely in trying to introduce the world to me and how I was different than the character in my show. And I think that my first book was, I was just excited to be writing a book and hope that anyone would read it. And I think the difference between that and now is I really wanted in the first book for people to like me. I was just excited about the medium, and the stories were funny and they were somewhat personal. But the thing with this book is that it's like I know now people know me, and I know that people like me, and I wanted people to really know who I was. So I'm incredibly honest and vulnerable in this book. And it's a little scary, actually, but I think it makes the book funnier. And there's some references to my time in college. I was in a sorority for three
That's
and a
my
half
favorite
months.
chapter, sort of the way that you capture life, because we're the same age, late 20s, as you said.
Late 20s, yeah.
And I remember that era of sort of, I was not in a fraternity, but that specific Dave Matthews Band era
Sarah McLachlan,
of,
yes.
of college life
Yeah.
that you were drawn to and also realized you weren't a part of.
Yeah, so I talk about my time being in a sorority, but largely the book is about my life in the past 5 years, which is, it feels to me that more has happened in the last 5 years of my life than the preceding, 30. So I really spent a lot of time talking about all the huge plot twists that have happened in the recently to me.
Let me read some of the chapter titles, which you're always really great at chapter titles. And if anything jumps out of mind that you can give us examples of these chapters. Yeah. It begins, hello, pretty self-explanatory. Then, for the ladies, how to look spectacular, a starlet's confessions. Can you give a preview to anyone here because the book doesn't come out until September 29th. Between now and then, what if they want to look spectacular? What's a couple things they can do?
Yeah, so if I was reading a book like this, all I would want to know was how on my television show I'm able to like the secrets of looking good, because I'm like a regular sized woman who just wants to know beauty secrets like everybody else. And one section in that, and I'd go through all the different secrets that I've learned about how I look the way I look, is how to lurk in shadows like the vampire Nosferatu. Because on the show, it is so unfair. Like, I am lit like Ingrid Bergman. I'm lit like a beautiful angel all the time. It would be impossible to look the way that I do on the show.
They have lights inside your wardrobe,
They
heard.
They keep Christmas lights inside my bra. So it looks like I am...
Inner glow.
It looks like I have an inner glow. It fakes an inner glow. For, as you know,
So is your advice,
Right.
get great lighting around you?
Get a cinematographer to light you all the time.
Is there anything practical if you don't have a crew?
Yeah, so that book, so if you don't have a crew to make you look the way you do, I think it was fun to write because I both got to peel back some of the phony stuff in Hollywood, why women are able to look the way they do, which is really fun to reveal. And then also actually give little practical tips on how we achieve the way that we look on TV.
Right. What about the chapter Take This Job and Love It?
Well, as some of you may have heard about, My television show, which is the love of my life, has been through.
Thanks
thank
a
you,
lot.
Has had the second love of my life has been through a lot of changes. You know, I wrote an essay about basically it started as a show that was produced for NBC. NBC passed on it, got picked up by Fox, and we lived there for 3 years. And then we were canceled by Fox, and then Hulu picked us up for 26 episodes. Thank you very much. And then now we're picked up for Hulu for more episodes than we've ever done in a single year. So I know, and I'm so excited. But it's like being in a really rocky relationship. Like my show is like, it's like having, it's, the show is, it's like, the show has had all these different boyfriends, and they keep being these like spectacular breakups and then reversals and then new suitors coming out of the woodwork. So it's kind of been more dramatic than any love life. It's been this show, which is about romance and dating.
And have you learned lessons from that roller coaster, or are you the same person you were?
I've learned no lessons. No, I have, which is the name of my next book. Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as a person where, like, you think it's like, okay, everything is very calm. When I was a kid and I thought, wow, it would be amazing if I had my own TV show and my name would be in it, and then I would never complain again and be so happy. And then just to see how rocky that is. And it's not just me. There's 150 people who work on my show, or my crew and my cast and my writing staff and everything. And I want to be able to give them employment. And so when we go through this, we kind of go through this together. And so, yeah, it's always rocky. It's never sort of been smooth sailing, which is surprising to me.
And speaking of television, there's one thing I love in your writing is sometimes you just like to let your comedy writer out. And one of the chapters is Coming This Fall,
yes,
in which you speculate on a hypothetical television lineup that you could expect to see on TV. Do you remember any of those offhand?
Yeah, no, well, I wrote this essay called Coming This Fall, and in my first book I had an essay called Types of Women in Romantic Comedies Who Are Not Real. And it was, it just went through different tropes of women, like the 42-year-old grandmother, like that kind of thing that it's often in
Charming architect
as a trope.
Right.
And so I thought that'd be really fun in this book to do something similar, but apply it to television, what I've learned in TV, which is new types of TV shows they try to debut every fall. One is, my favorite one is hot serial killer who is also a little bit literary. And that's a show where, like, the police commissioner's name is, like, Chuck Dickens, and, like, prostitutes are being murdered, and, like, Shakespeare quotes are attached to their bodies. And, yeah, like, it's, like, your mother's favorite show that she has to... And she's, like, in love with the lead, and who's played by a British actor doing an American accent. Like, so there's a whole essay with just different types of shows.
I remember on The Office, especially early when we were worried about being canceled, we blew off steam by putting up on the board sort of a whole lineup for CBS procedurals. It was all like Ghost, Bones, Murder, Police. Yeah. Sort of, we've always had that enjoyment of riffing on fake TV.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Good.
So you're in the McDonald's movie, huh?
Hey, this is not about me. This is not about me.
I just saw that.
That's the title of my book. This is not about me.
Do you
hey.
go to McDonald's a lot?
I understand that you feel left out as a lifelong McDonald's fan.
I'm just curious.
I've been to McDonald's mostly with you. You love McDonald's, I know. I'll talk to the director.
Okay.
There's a chapter called Player.
Yes. I wrote a chapter in my book called Player. It's about actually a female friend that I had in my mid-20s when I was in New York, and I never experienced this before, who kind of seduced me as a friend and then dumped me. And it's a sort of when you're an adult, you have these kinds of friendships because it's so much harder to make friends as adult women, which is why you should cling to your friends that you've made as teenagers and in college as hard as you can.
That's very interesting. Talk talk about friendships. Like, what I know some of your very good friends from college, and I have the same situation. But it is like summer camp. I feel working in television and film, especially because you get so intensely connected with people, and then unless it's a long-running TV show, which is a very rare and lucky thing, you move on, and these intense things go away. What have your friendships been like, and which ones have survived, and are there any values that are consistent with the friendships that last?
Well, we were so lucky because, first of all, we became friends when we were still super young, and also because we were working sometimes 16-hour-long days at the office, and we did it for 8 years. So it was like going to college twice together, and it was just like being in a bunker. So we kind of got to replicate what it would have been like to go to like a boarding school and college together. But in general, when you're in LA, the only people you meet are like women at your spin class. And you have to sort of wonder what if a woman is going to seek you out at spin class to be your best friend, like you have to kind of wonder what the motivations are, but you're so desperate for female friendship, as I am, that you're like, okay, this isn't like a weird situation, like, and so it's hard when when you're an adult woman, because for the most part, like, you know, people are more focused on finding their romantic mate. But I have found in the past 4 years that I've wanted so much more like a friend, like a female friend, and because, you know, it's much harder to find someone that you like and want to talk to than it is to find a man you want to sleep with. You know, I have found, and so, you know, it's hard. And LA is populated with more ambitious. Everyone comes to LA to be successful, and some one way or the other, and so everyone's there. You don't have those, you know, same normal people. But we grew up 10 minutes away from each other. We just never knew each other. Kind of romantic, actually. And I feel like we come from similar backgrounds, and I think that's why we got along.
Yes, and it's interesting to me too, because in terms of friendships, there's so much creative collaboration, which is how you connect. But when we worked together, we were equals on The Office with a boss, Greg Daniels, who wrote something in your book, this book.
Yes, this is very exciting. I had Greg Daniels write an essay on what it's like to be a mentor, because I thought people ask me all the time what it's like, you know, for me now is to be a mentor, which makes me feel a little bit old because, as you know, I'm extremely young.
Yeah.
But when I think of people who've given me opportunities and have, you know, given me opportunities and set an example, it was him. And so this is great because he wrote an incredibly funny essay that I think you read about doing that, and he's never, I don't think, done anything like that. So I'm really excited for people to read that essay.
And why I mention that is because it's also interesting to me that you are a boss, and you probably hire people that you are creatively connected to. Is it hard to be in a situation where you are in charge of people and they are your employees technically, and they're also your friends?
Surprisingly, I like it a lot. I think the benefit, of course, is that of being the boss. I don't need to be like explaining why it's good to be the boss, but it's that you get things done the way you want it to get things done. But the sad thing is that when you and I were both like employees at a show, there's so much fun in a job, especially if you have long hours at a job, to complain about the boss. That's like 40% of like what's fun about the job.
Yeah.
That's like the whole premise of The Office, is everyone complaining about Michael Scott. It's much less fun, as it turns out, to be Michael Scott sometimes.
Well, that was a big part of the premise of The Office, that he wished he could be with everyone making fun of everything.
Right.
And that wasn't his role.
Right, and so my writing staff is largely comprised of people that were my friends before that I hired to come be on the show. But yeah, I do miss that aspect of it, is I can't really sit there and complain about the hours with them, because they're like, you set the hours.
Right.
So.
Now, in your book, this was.
I just wanted to just say one thing, which is that I don't work with BJ anymore and on our shows, and he's obviously very busy doing his own projects. But this is so fun for me because I actually get to spend time with him. So no, it's true. So this is.
I actually asked to hang out with you, and you said I need 2 microphones, 2,200 people, hair and makeup.
Be able to monetize it, yeah.
Yeah. And I said, let's set it up.
Let's set it up. This is very nice.
Let me
Have
get
you
to some-
asking me questions and me being able to talk at you. and not have to ask you any questions back.
Right, I can
think
deflect them. It's so much fun. You mentioned one of your, I've always been curious about when it pops up in conversation, the crushes you've had over your life, because they're so eclectic, and each one tells a different story to me of who you were and what your values were. And I learned of a new one that was your first crush ever, that you mentioned in this book. And will you tell us who that was?
Yeah, my very first crush that I can remember, the kind of crush that keeps you up at night, was when I was 11 years old, and it was on Dana Carvey, who many of you might not even know, which makes me so sad. But Dana Carvey was like the Bill Hader from like 1992 SNL. Is that
Sure.
like an example?
Yeah.
Like he was an incredible impressionist, and like he did the church lady and did all these impressions of Ross Perot. And now I'm really dating myself. Most of the audience is like, who the hell is Ross Perot?
Right.
Anyway, but so he was, and I had an enormous crush on him. He was my very first.
What kind of fantasies did you have involving Dana Carvey?
Well, here's my thing. I never liked like the bad boy. I never liked 90210 Luke Perry. Like that wasn't for me. I only liked like the good boy, which
Okay.
is why Dana Carvey was so appealing to me, because he was very sweet and nice, and I could picture like living next to my family with him in our house. Like
Yeah.
that was my fantasy.
Parents loved Dana Carvey.
Yes.
Yeah, you would have done well.
Yeah.
What other crushes did you move on to from there?
Well, it wasn't until I got older that I liked like bad boys, like you.
I like to think I represent the good boy in most people's.
You know what you are? You're
As
the
in-
bad boy in the group of
Can't
good
resist the
boys.
bad boy.
You're like the baddest of the good boys.
I think that's true.
Like at space camp, you're the kid who like is like, want to smoke weed, and everyone's like, that guy's cool.
That smoking weed at space camp sounds really fun. This is gonna blow your mind. We can go there. Who were the other crushes when you did when the bad boy thing did percolate?
I loved Christian Slater. When Heathers came out, I remember wanting so badly for Christian Slater to take my virginity. I thought that would be like a pretty interesting.
And
And it happened. No, it didn't. I later then saw him because he was on a TV show, and I think he awkwardly, he was very sweet, but he had heard that I had said that, and he came up. We had a very awkward conversation at a like a TV event.
I don't mean
Yeah.
to embarrass you. I remember another crush that was fiercely debated in the writers' room of the office, which
Yeah.
was Pierce Brosnan.
Yes, yeah.
What did that represent to you?
Well, I remember when I was younger, Pierce Brosnan, and I read a little bit about this in my first book. He was in Mrs. Doubtfire, and he was like the hot guy in Mrs. Doubtfire. And what I liked so much about him was that he represented a very 80s and 90s ideal for women, which was kind of before we got into like the thing that all men must have like no chest hair and be super tan, uniformly tan. And he didn't have any of that. He had chest hair, and he was kind of pale, but he looked like a normal hot dad. And I was like, for some reason, as a younger person, I was very
It's so
attracted
telling
that.
to me that you had a crush on Pierce Brosnan as the dad from Mrs. Doubtfire rather than James Bond.
Yes, yeah, you're right. No, I think that is weird.
Who would you like to see as James Bond?
Idris Elba, like everyone
Yeah, I
else in the world, right? Who were some of your like crushes when you were a teenager?
Who were my crushes?
I feel like Alyssa Milano was someone you
Yeah,
liked.
sure.
Yeah.
But she was so out of my league, I didn't even think.
As
I
a
was like,
famous
maybe Alyssa Milano has like a friend, you know. Now you have in your first book, best friend rights and responsibilities. I know that you love rules and codes.
Yeah.
Are there any other rules that you choose to impart in this book or even to this audience? Any advice or that can be told in a authoritative way, a bossy way?
Well, one thing that I get asked a lot about, and this isn't exactly this, but is young women ask me advice on how to have my life or a career that looks like mine, or
They look at you and they ask, why not me, right?
they look at me and they
What's
ask,
your
"Why not
advice
me?"
to someone who looks at you,
and says,
admires
"Why not
you,
me?" I
and
say,
thinks,
"Back
"Why not
off.
me?"
It's not your time yet.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get this going. Stay in school." No. But my advice, and I just, what I have noticed, and this is not necessarily popular advice, is that I think we're really in the time where like television and songs and movies are all about like not letting, you know, the 15-year-old version of you that's being bullied not be able to express yourself. It's like be able to say whatever you want and do whatever you want and don't let your inner light shine through and like always listen to your inner voice and everything. And sort of my advice to that, or my reaction to that is, it is very important to be expressive in so much that no one should ever be stopping you from saying what you need to say, or you should never have that fear. However, I think as a young person, it's equally important, if not more important, to be perceptive and to be sensitive. And I feel like we don't talk about that a lot because we feel like the only way to show that we're empowered is by speaking it. And I think that, you know, when I was growing up, I really thought that what my parents taught me was like, I didn't talk until I was like 15 years old. I was pretty much silent, which no one believes. And it's because I just was like listening and paying attention to what everyone was saying and you know, trying to have like a good social IQ, which I think helped me which helped me later to become a good writer. And I think that is the one biggest thing is to really, you know, to listen to others more than necessarily putting such a premium on being able to say what you feel. And that's not necessarily popular because every TV
It's a little
show
against the
is
grain,
just
yeah.
like a singing television show about like, I feel this and I should say this. And like, you know, like I feel this and I should say this.
Right.
Would be a really popular TV show right now.
Yes.
Not like, I'm listening and I understand what you're feeling,
Right.
which I think is a little bit more important.
If they ever have to rename the internet, they would call it that. Yes. I feel this and I should say this. But I think that's very wise that to have something to say is very hard, and it takes a lifetime of very sensitive observation. That's sort of the key to being a writer, and I think the key to your book, it feels like we're just listening to a friend, and we are, but you have thought so specifically and sort of the nuances on the sides of every cliche that you don't necessarily consider, rather than simply the direct thing. And I think that's really something great about your writing that is great to impart to people, to really develop the ability to be slightly different and to see things slightly differently, not just to say things slightly louder.
Thank you. What a smart way to talk about my book.
Time for questions for Mindy Kaling, especially about her book, Why Not Me? And we can go to the audience now.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm from Manhattan. This isn't about your book, so I
Ooh,
already feel...
Must be
Gossip Girl.
nice.
Must be nice.
Oh, so far up that it's not that nice. But my question is, since we're talking about your crushes, can you rank the men of You've Got Mail in order of attractiveness?
The men of You've Got Mail in order of attractiveness. Obviously, Tom, have you seen You've Got Mail?
Yes.
Okay. You say that almost offended, or like you're covering because you haven't actually
I feel like it's a prerequisite for being a friend
of yours. Okay, good. You know, Steve Zahn is in that movie, and I feel like we don't get to see Steve Zahn enough. And then, obviously, Tom Hanks, who is wonderful and is in the movie. I'm trying to think who else.
I know your number one crush from this
Oh
movie.
God, Craig Kinnear. That was like Greg Kinnear is fantastic in that movie, and that was at his height.
Unless it has changed, your number one crush from that movie is Dave Chappelle.
Oh my God, Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle. This is a movie. This is how good You've Got Mail is. Dave Chappelle is Tom Hanks's best friend in this movie, and it's like barely a thing. They're like, yeah, we were littered with famous people doing small parts. So it probably goes Chappelle, Hanks, Zahn.
That would have really changed his the way people perceived him in that movie. He's like, this is my best friend, Dave Chappelle. People are like, whoa!
Okay, so you want to
You're
know a story?
really cool.
Here's a story that I heard Tom Hanks say about filming that movie. They were shooting in the Upper West Side, and the Seinfeld finale was happening, which, again, most of you are too young to remember, but some of you might not. It was a huge phenomenon.
Seinfeld was like the Mindy project of its day.
Seinfeld was like the Mindy project of the 90s. Like a little bit less good. It's fine. You can see us both on Hulu Plus this fall. But so Tom Hanks, they had finished shooting, and they wrapped, and this is apocryphal, but apparently Tom Hanks said, where are we going to watch the Seinfeld finale? Because they were like in the middle of Manhattan. And so I think it was him and Dave Chappelle. They wrapped, and they too little time to go back to their hotels. It was about to start in like 5 minutes because they were shooting a night shoot. And that him and Dave Chappelle they knocked on the door of an apartment building, a random apartment building. They went to an apartment building in the Upper West Side where they were shooting, and they said, everyone's just gonna be watching it, right? Maybe they'll just let us come into their house. And I heard a story that Dave Chappelle and Tom Hanks wandered through the Upper West Side, which is 100% all watching the Seinfeld finale,
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Upper West Side, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean that in
She's
like...
from Manhattan, she knows
Yeah,
what's up.
okay, but I don't mean that in any racial way.
Now that you mention it, I think you do, but continue.
I didn't mean like Jewish, I just meant like I'm sure everyone was watching it.
You're
as it
digging a
happened.
hole, Mindy. Just come back up.
So they knocked on a door and they're like, "Are you watching the Seinfeld finale?" And the surprised father there was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Can we watch it with you?" And he invited them in to watch. This random Upper West Side family invited Dave Chappelle and Tom Hanks to watch the Seinfeld finale with them during the shooting of You've Got Mail.
I hope someone from New York Magazine tracks them down. I want to hear that side of the story.
Yes. Anyway.
Next question over
Yes,
here.
next question.
Hi, I'm Lori. I'm from Toronto. Yay.
Great.
I was hoping you could tell us a bit about your writing process and if it differed from your second book to your first book.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. I mean, the biggest compliment that I can get about my writing, particularly in essay form, is that it's like you're talking to your friend or you're listening to your friend talk to you. And so what I started doing was just talking and recording it. And it did two things. One, it reminded me of the conversational tone that I have when I'm talking and how to try to mimic that in writing. And also, what it would do is when I would transcribe it, it would actually have something on the page, so I didn't have to look at a blank page. And do you do that when you do your writing?
I've done versions of that, yeah. And I hear about a lot of writers that we admire who dictate in that sense. My favorite writing advice that I read quoted was from Christopher Hitchens to his students, who said, "If you can talk, you can write." And all the students relaxed. And then he said, "But how many of you can really talk?" Over here.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm from Manhattan. So my question is, I know that in the past you've discussed your love for SNL, and then when you auditioned and then you didn't get a part on cast, and then how you later were a guest writer. So my question is, if you had a week to spare and you could host, would you want to host despite some of the things that you've said in the past of what it was like there? And what would be either someone you would want to impersonate, or who?
Whoa, what a great question.
Your
Or
dream
what's
question.
Yeah, I actually loved writing at SNL. I wrote there for 2 weeks during season 2 and 3 of The Office because Mike Shoemaker and Lorne Michaels were just nice enough to have me come work there. And I learned so much. But it's such a great question. If I was there, which I would love to do, of course, obviously host SNL, it would be so much fun. A celebrity impression that I would do, what would you think would be? Probably Cookie from Empire. Probably I'd probably want to like Martin Lawrence style do all of the characters from Empire. In like one thing. That'd probably be what I'd want to do.
That's a great answer.
Okay.
Over here.
Can you do any celebrity impressions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll think about it.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Eleanor and I'm from Miami. My question is, have you learned anything new about yourself through the characters that you've played on TV, and more in specific through Mindy Lahiri?
Well, that's a great question. Have I learned anything new? Mindy Lahiri has dated a lot of guys. Mindy Lahiri has dated more men than I've ever met in my life. And I think that it's been interesting fake dating so many different guys, because as an actor, when you are dating someone on screen, it's like a little bit of their actual courtship rituals come to life. So it's been in some weird way you've been able to see what that is like a little bit. Mindy is the character Mindy on the show is so much smarter than me in some ways, in that she's a surgeon and she's an OBGYN, a job that I took from my mom's, my late mother's job, which is fascinating and very noble. But in some other ways, she's just a really kind of narcissistic, crazy, 25-year-old woman. And so I feel like I have learned how to those two dials, because I feel like a lot of us have those parts of our personalities, but hers are just to the extreme. And so it's been very interesting being able to flip those in the character, but also in a way that seems like realistic to people's real lives.
I've noticed something. I've noticed you become more comfortable being yourself and being excellent and not thinking of those things as in conflict. And I noticed that developed at the same time, rather than always strategizing like, this person's successful, so I should act more like that person in every way. Whereas Mindy Lahiri is excellent at her job and completely herself in the rest of her life. And I've noticed you become more yourself and not think of that as a conflict with being excellent or anything.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, next.
Hey guys, my name's Scott. I grew up in Connecticut, but I currently live in Manhattan. Mindy, we met yesterday at the expo. You might remember me.
Do you want me to leave you too?
Wearing the.
Hold on. What?
No, we met yesterday at the expo. I'm wearing the same exact shirt, and I realized how poorly planned that was. But so, since this is BookCon and we have both of you here, I'm sorry to put you guys on the spot, but I was wondering if you guys could tell us something about the project you guys are working on together, and in the spirit of BookCon, maybe give us a little bit of an extra nugget that maybe hasn't gone out to the press yet.
Well,
Thanks,
it's very early. It's very early in the creative process, and in fact, we just met yesterday to discuss really all the different directions it could go in. So that book would not be out for quite a while, and I think we'll go through many sort of directions and conversations on the way there. So I would...
Will our fighting keep us from writing our book project together?
I would just direct the attention back to Why Not Me, which will be out in September, rather than wait for something that we don't even know.
It's gonna be awesome. We just started working on it. I mean, we have the stress emanating off of you.
No, it's not stress. I got specific instructions to...
No, it's very exciting. I love working with him, and we just started doing it again. And the ideas that we've had so far have been super exciting.
Yes. I'm just trying to make it all about this book.
No, thank you. That's very respectful.
Hi, my name's Natalie. I'm from Toronto. And per my shirt, I just have to tell you that I love you.
Thank you very much.
So my question is, which I think quite a few Mindy Project fans want to know, is now that the show's on Hulu, does that mean we can get some more risque shots of Messina?
It's funny. I was talking to Matt Warburton, who runs the show, who runs the Mindy Project with me, and there's when you find out you're on a platform like Hulu, which is much more liberal, both with what you're allowed to do and the length of time the show can be on. You have this feeling when you've been on network television, and I've been writing on network television for 11 or 12 years, of being like, ooh, like what can we do now? It can just be like all like sex and drugs and like all this stuff you want to do, because Matt and I are both like, smart writers, but also like repressed people. And sort of what we decided was, we definitely want people who tune into the show on Hulu to be tuning in for two reasons. One, because there's like lots of cool new stuff that we're doing that we can't do on network TV, but also not to give up the thing that you like love about the show. And I think that so much of romance comes from restraint. And I think that it's the stuff that you kind of you don't necessarily see, which is what makes it romantic. And I remember on The Office, one of the most romantic things that happened in the first season is a moment that BJ wrote in this episode called Diversity Day, which is at the end of this incredibly funny episode, there's a moment when Jim, who's having the worst day of his whole career basically, Pam falls asleep on his shoulder. And he remembers that as being, and you can see just in his expression how romantic and how amazing it was. And that was a woman falling asleep on a grown man's shoulder. So to me, I remember that so much more than like any sexy sex scene you could see on any TV show. So I always have to remind myself of that a little goes a long way. Because I'm, of course, from the school of like more is more, and a lot goes a long way, and as you can tell from the show. But I think we are going to push the envelope in ways that we haven't been able to, which is great. Question. Over here.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Ria. I'm from Maryland, and my question is also about the Mindy Project. So you've talked about how you want to get married and have kids, and that's something that's been a dream of yours always. But then on the other hand, you were talking about not having female friends, and that's something that I know a lot of fans have discussed with, from season 1 transitioning all the way to season 3. We're not seeing as much of Mindy Lahiri's friends. So do you think that you're still incorporating aspects from your real life into Mindy Lahiri, or do you think that you try to keep that a dream character?
Well, the question that you bring up about having female friends and that being something that I seek out, and then reflected in the show it's so funny. My favorite people in LA that I've met happen to also be, and I don't think this is a coincidence, really successful people. So my favorite friends that I've met in LA are Ellie Kemper and Lena Dunham, who both have their own television shows. So when you or like Lizzie Kaplan, who's also the star of her own show. So these are people personally who I adore, and then within a blink of an eye, before I'm like, hey, should you come be on my show? It's like they have their own television show. As you know, Ellie Kemper came and did a little arc on our show before she started Kimmy Schmidt. So. Nothing would make me happier than finding someone, and I think it's important, and I hope that we can do that this season, finding a great and worthy and funny person for me to sit across from and talk about my problems with. And the writer's room is starting up on Monday, and this is basically what we're going to be thinking about, is that. And other different things we can do now that we're on Hulu. But I hope that kind of answered your question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kenya. I'm from Westchester, and this is like the most amazing thing ever.
Thank you.
My question is, it's a two-part question. Like, you have so many amazing guest stars. Who would you say is your favorite, and like, who's your dream? My personal dream is Kerry Washington.
Kerry Washington is such a good answer to that question. Kerry's great because she is amazing on Scandal, but she's also very funny. Her SNL is like one of my favorite SNLs that happened all of last season. But I think my favorite guest star, obviously it's wonderful to be able to get people like BJ back on the show, to bribe him by, we wrote an episode together and you played Jamie, the Latin teacher, and he came back in the finale. And you're extremely funny in that part.
Thanks for the paycheck.
Thank you. And so I love working with BJ. I think Stephen Colbert is probably my favorite guest star we've ever had. The fact that in this sort of small window between him doing the Colbert Report and then taking over of The Late Show, the fact that one of the only acting gigs he did was our show to play a priest is amazing. And an ex-drug addict, sex addict priest.
Right.
Who grew up in Danny's neighborhood. So
and now he's typecast.
But I thought that was sort of felt, not only was it wonderful to act with him, and I loved it, it also felt very cool for the show. In terms of guests that I would love, Reese Witherspoon, Tom Hanks, Dave Chappelle. I mean, how cool that would be. Do you imagine if Dave Chappelle is like a single dad that Mindy was sort of like in love with, even though she was like in a relationship? I mean, he'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. But those are my answers. And obviously Reese Witherspoon. Did I already say her?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Over here?
Okay, we have time for just 2 more questions, so we're going to do 1 more on each side.
Hi, Mindy. My name is Mehreen. I'm from Atlanta. I had a quick question about your book, and I know how you talked about how it reflects on the last 5 years, but I want to know if it kind of hints at some of your goals and dreams for the next 5 years and sort of what's next for Mindy Kaling.
What a great question. I started writing this essay for the book where I look back at the old book, and I did this thing at the end of my last book where I said, God, I'll see you soon, guys, and hopefully in my next book, I don't know, I'll be married and be a movie star, and I'll have kids, and I'll have directed some cool movies, and I'll be rich as hell and living in a townhouse in Manhattan. It was just something like that, and I hope that's what I said I hope for myself. And I was like, fuck you, 2010 self. I looked at that, and it said, and then the last thing was that I will learn where my natural lip line is. And of the 6 things that I predicted for myself, I only did one of the 6 things, which is I learned where my natural lip line was.
Oh, well, that's great news.
And I was looking at that, and I was thinking that's such a good, that's so inherent the problem of my personality and other people who I think of themselves as high achieving, which is that I set up, instead of being able to enjoy the fact that I have a pretty good amount of success, I was like, no, I need to have these other things within 5 years. And all it did was make me feel like I had accomplished nothing. And so I sort of said to myself that I was not going to do that again. I was not going to say that I needed these 5 things. I mean, that, by the way, and many of you who are in here, I can imagine, are, you make a list of things that you want to accomplish so you know what you can accomplish. And throughout my life, that's been very helpful to me. But now it just drives me crazy. So the only thing I want to do with the next 5 years is make a new good friend. That's it. So,
Last question.
do you have any hopes and dreams, BJ?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Hi, my name is Brittany, and I'm also from Toronto. I guess the whole city's here. I was just wondering if there was a chapter that you wanted to include in the book that got cut, and why.
Oh, that's a great question. By the way, you're half Canadian. No one knows that about you.
I know, I figured it was your day, but yeah.
Because your dad is from Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted
I
to
don't want
point
this to
out.
end, so I'm like
I just
drawing it
thought it was interesting to point out that technically you're more of a foreigner than I am.
You love that kind of thing. I don't know many people more American than you.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I once had a boyfriend that said, I remember I saw a house and there was like an American flag in the front of the house. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. I can't wait to have a house, like, a big house where I could put an American flag in the front. And he was like, oh, I would never do that. That's very political. And I always thought, like, why would that be wrong or bad?
Right.
To have an American flag waving in the front of her. But now the connotations of that are considered weird.
Right. This is a very weighty question. And I don't think she asked her question. Was your question about
Why
the
doesn't
limits of
everyone have
patriotism
American-
and its implications? Or was it more, what is your question?
Oh, there's a chapter that was cut. One thing that makes you such a good best friend, I will say, is that whenever I want to steer into stuff that could get us into trouble,
I'm by the book here.
definitely steer us back. A chapter that was
It's a full-time job.
a chapter that was cut from the book. There was a lot of stuff that I would. I think when you're writing about your life, there's a lot of stuff that's very interesting to you that is not necessarily interesting to other people, but you love writing about it. And so, in my book, it was like I have a book called A Day in the Life of Mindy Kaling, because I think some people think that my life looks like the Katy Perry video for California Girls, where I'm just like hanging around with a bunch of girls and like Snoop Dogg and we're eating cupcakes all day long or something like that. And so I talked really about what my day is like and how it starts at 5 a.m. and how it ends. But in that, I was really getting into very like boring minutiae about like my day, about like the editorial process and things like that, which I find very interesting, but the average person probably wouldn't. So I cut a lot of that stuff. But was there anything else that I wrote about? Scientology? Did I do anything like that I had to cut because it was too...
Well, I think your editors are here. They probably were like, this could get us in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I wrote anything.
Should we do another question?
Yeah, let's do one more question, yeah. Cool.
What's the second question?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm going to just say this so people can hear you, is that, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, correct me if you're wrong, is that I am Indian, but I don't necessarily play like an Indian character where that's a huge part of the storylines, I'm assuming. And then what was the second part? How did I come up with the concept? The Actual Mindy Project. Okay, so one thing I'll say is, so James Franco was on the show, and one thing I loved about James Franco was that James Franco exists in my mind, and I think he's a wonderful artist, and he's really exists and he has the luck of being a white man, because James Franco does such weird stuff and varied stuff, and nothing is about the fact that he's like his identity as a white man. He's a real artist who's doing all these things, and I just felt like when you are Indian and you are a woman, which is just the skin that I was born into, James Franco doesn't exist if you're an Indian woman. That's not a choice you can take, because the things that people look for is like your overt appearance. And so James makes all these choices, and really none of them are about necessarily being like.
People don't ask as a so-and-so, why are you doing this?
Right, so he's a blank slate. Literally, his being a white man makes him a blank slate to make all these choices as an artist. And I don't come in a blank slate. But I have often treated my creative choices as a blank slate, and that friction happens a lot with viewers, because they're like, wait, no, I'm still caught up on the fact that you're an Indian woman. And that isn't bad, because I am, and there's not a lot of us on TV. So a lot of the show has been giving people who see that, talking a little bit about that and indulging a little bit about that, which is why it does come up in the show sometimes. And at The Office, I wrote an episode called Diwali, so it is very interesting to me. But it's also just deciding that I'm going to do stories as a woman in her 30s who's trying to find love. And I do think that is Indian women, that's like white American women, but I just want the character to be relatable. And the reason why I think this room is packed with women and not all of them are Indian women is because that feels like it's been successful. And I love that. And I think I want to continue to do things like, when I get older, maybe I'll want to explore that more, like what it's like to be the child of two people who were raised in different parts of India, moved to Africa, and then we're here. But then I also want to tell stories about what it was like to grow up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and be single and be in your 30s. So I want to be able to do both, and sometimes that stresses people out. But that's kind of the only way I know how to do it. But
It's a fascinating and very true to you answer.
Oh, thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much. Let's have
Thank
another
you so
round of
much.
applause for Mindy Kaling.
Thank you so much.